In 2000, following his completion of Green Hell, Keyes was deployed to Egypt as part of the Multinational Force and Observers, a peacekeeping force set up in the 1980s between America, Egypt, and the country of Israel. Keyes' unit made sure that no one crossed the border from Saudi Arabia and kept Egyptian and Israeli forces from crossing into the Sinai. His platoon sergeant said that this would have been a pretty uneventful 6 months in regards to combat, but that does not mean that Keyes didn't get into any intense situations. He and his buddies all chipped in to rent a hotel suite to party for the weekend in Tel Aviv, and Keyes made some questionable choices while he was there. Keyes had 2 strange experiences with women on this trip. One with a Norwegian exchange student and the other with a prostitute. In both experiences, he described himself as losing control and scaring the women.
So what kind of stuff do the other guys what kind of issues would they see that they...
They just knew I had psychosocial issues, I guess. I don't know what you would call it. There was that, like I say, there was that time when we went to Tel Aviv when I was in Egypt, and they saw some of the stuff I did when I was...
For instance?
Well, they knew that there was a prostitute in Tel Aviv.
Apparently, he and some army buddies took a bus to this hotel in Tel Aviv and rented a suite on the 6th floor. An Israeli man approached them and told them that he owned the 6th floor of the building. He sent a woman to the suite. She was a prostitute, and she went into one of the rooms with Keyes for about half an hour, and then she came storming out. There was also a communication barrier between them because she was Russian and did not speak English. Keyes said, "She was a pretty small little Russian girl, and she and I had been drinking, so, I kind of threw her around a little bit. I didn't hurt her or hit her or anything, but I wasn't going to let her run the show, I guess."
I didn't let her out of the room for a while, and she tried to kick me when I finally decided to let her out, and my buddies got really mad at me and got all freaked out because she was employed by the Russian mob over there, and they had been calling her phone the whole time, and I guess they were banging on all my buddies' doors trying to find out which room she was in, and they got really pissed off at me because, those guys were serious. There was like these 2 really big guys who were looking for her. And she was pissed off at me for other reasons. So. Yeah, so they knew I had issues.
One of them explained to the FBI that after the woman left, quote, "All of the guys asked Keyes what had happened to make her leave without taking any money. Keyes would not say anything about it, or he said nothing happened. Keyes never talked about any sexual exploits."
There was a girl that I met in, I think it was when I was in Tel Aviv. She was pretty young. She was a student. She was Turkish, but I think she was from she was a Norwegian exchange student or something. And I wouldn't say that was like an outright rape because she, we were hanging out and stuff, and she allowed herself to be, it was in her room. She told me where her room was and stuff. And I was gonna, I almost, I did lose control a little bit as things progressed, and that's when I realized, that if I was gonna do that kind of stuff, it had to just be complete strangers from then on. It couldn't be anyone who knew me or who had seen me around the person, or it shouldn't even, the the whole thing that happened in Oregon freaked me out because I could almost see the beach from where I worked every day, and it was just too close to home. And I just realized that if I kept doing stuff like that, it was only a matter of time before I got caught. And so that's when I don't know, after that happened in Tel Aviv, I just got really careful and decided, for one thing, that I wasn't going to do anything when I was in the Army, because they always had tabs on me. They always knew where I was, and they always knew, like, my buddies were, if we were in Tel Aviv or Eilat or, you know, somewhere in Israel, my buddies were usually just right around the corner. And it was pretty much the same thing when I was in Washington. When I was stationed in Washington, I had my own truck and stuff, and I would go to Eastern Washington sometimes, but for the most part, they always knew where I was, and I just realized I had to kind of chill out and not do anything. Plus, I had knives and stuff, but all my guns I kept stored off base, because you weren't supposed to have guns in your room when I was in the Army. So yeah, I don't know. For the most part, when I was in the Army, I got in less trouble when I was in the Army than pretty much any other time.
Mm-hmm. Keyes said that this experience made him realize that he needed to wait to do these kinds of things until after he got out of the military. Apparently, he actually said, "I can't wait to get out of the military so I can start killing." An old Army buddy of Keyes told investigators that Keyes would frequently cross the border into Israel without specifying how many times. One guy in his squad said that he remembered Keyes being a heavy drinker and suspected that he also used marijuana, though he could not recall any specific incidents. He described Keyes as a happy drunk, but also recalled Keyes having a few violent outbursts, though he clarified that this was not necessarily unusual behavior with the guys who drank heavily. In addition to drinking heavily and smoking weed, Keyes also tried LSD twice, and he used cocaine pretty often, though he did eventually stop. Though another Army buddy described Keyes as being a mean drunk, not a happy one. He said that Keyes would use cocaine, but that everyone in the infantry used a little cocaine now and then, so it didn't seem like a problem to him. He also branded himself multiple times with the help of some of his buddies. Originally, it was believed that Keyes got a pentagram tattoo on the back of his neck, but according to one of his Army buddies, this was actually a brand that he got while he was in the Army. The guy who helped to brand him used a coat hanger, and he couldn't actually bend the coat hanger, so he had to use individual lines to form the star, and he used a soda pop can to form the circle. He said that the burn looked bad the next day and for the few following days. He added that the pentagram brand was just the results of being drunk, and there was no ritual associated with it.
I think I had to have the one on my back done a couple times to get it to stick.
Which one's on your back?
The pentagram.
Okay.
But yeah, the rest of them I mostly did myself.